Okay, let's dive in. Something really pretty extraordinary has just happened in the financial markets. We're talking a genuine one in a trillion event. And look, that's not just some clickbait headline, This is about the absolutely jaw-dropping moves in the USDT-WD exchange rate, US dollar versus the Taiwanese dollar, just over the last few days.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because this event, which might seem kind of specific, could actually be a huge signal for the whole global financial system.
Yeah, how so?
Well, it really puts a spotlight on some potential underlying weaknesses, fragilities. And it sort of ties into those bigger things we watch, like the yield curve dynamics.
Yeah.
It's not abstract. These are real tremors.
Yeah, tremors is a good word. And when we say one in a trillion, it's almost impossible to really picture.
It really is.
Think about it, like the odds of a massive asteroid hitting us, or maybe even, the sun just not coming up tomorrow. It's that level of improbable.
And some reports are going even further, calling it a 19 sigma shock.
19. I mean, most people know a 3 sigma event is rare, right? 19 is just off the charts, astronomical.
Completely off the charts.
So, okay, our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Let's try and unpack what we know, look at the reports, and figure out the potential causes behind this massive market shock, and importantly, what it might mean going forward.
Sounds good. Let's maybe start with just visualizing what happened. If you imagine a chart, say a 5-year chart of the USDT-WD rate.
Uh-huh.
Normally you see currencies move, gradually. It takes months for big shifts sometimes.
Right, gradual ups and downs.
Exactly. But what we saw here is being described as like an almost vertical drop. The dollar just plummeted against the Taiwanese dollar.
Not a slow slide, then.
Not at all. Someone described it like falling straight down, even steeper than one of those crazy water park slides. Just whoosh.
Wow. Okay, that definitely paints a picture. Intense panic, maybe. Or some really, really powerful force just pushing it down.
Could be either or both. And the first explanation doing the rounds Market Watch picked up on this. It points towards Taiwanese life insurance company.
All right. Life insurers, how are they involved?
Well, the theory is they might be facing a kind of mismatch, liabilities versus assets. It might ring a bell because it sounds a bit like the Silicon Valley Bank situation.
Ah, okay. SVB. Remind us quickly how that worked.
Right. So SVB, the main problem was interest rate risk. They had loads of long-term U.S. Treasury bonds bought when rates were low, but their liabilities, customer deposits, was short-term. When interest rates shot up, the value of those long-term bonds tanked.
And when depositors wanted their money.
Exactly. They had to sell those devalued bonds at a loss. Boom.
Right. So how does that connect to Taiwan's insurers? Is it interest rates again?
Not exactly. The key difference here apparently is currency risk, foreign exchange or FX risk.
Okay.
They reportedly didn't hedge that risk. So think about it. Their liabilities, what they owe policyholders, are in Taiwanese dollars.
Makes sense. Local currency.
But a big chunk of their assets, their investments, are in U.S. dollar bonds. Mostly U.S. treasuries, but also, corporate bonds, agency stuff.
So U.S. dollar assets, Taiwanese dollar liabilities. I see the potential problem.
Precisely. Unlike SVB, where it was mostly dollar versus dollar and rate risk, here,
Sure.
if the U.S. dollar falls against the Taiwanese dollar,
Which it just did dramatically.
then when they need to convert those U.S. dollar assets back into Taiwanese dollars to pay claims, they get fewer Taiwanese dollars, potentially not enough.
And Taiwan holds a lot of U.S. debt, right?
They do. Reportedly, the 10th largest holder, something like $295 billion worth as of February this year. So, yeah, it's a significant exposure if things go wrong.
Okay, so the insurers are exposed, the dollar drops. But why weren't they hedged? That seems like finance 101.
Well, the reported reason is cost. They apparently decided the hedging was too expensive.
Too expensive, but isn't that kind of the point?
Exactly. That's what seems so counterintuitive. If hedging is really expensive, that usually signals that the market thinks there's a high risk of big currency moves.
Right. It's like finding out fire insurance for your house is suddenly super expensive. You don't say, oh, well, I'll skip it then. You think, uh-oh, maybe I should be worried about fire.
Or, skipping the expensive oil change on your luxury car because it costs a lot. The potential cost of not doing it is way higher. It suggests the risk was seen as significant.
It really does. And the timing adds another wrinkle, doesn't it? Someone from Lombard Odier, Ham Lee, was quoted.
Yeah, saying that these insurers supposedly cut their FX hedging ratios to a 7-year low.
A 7-year low.
Right before Liberation Day. Now, given potential geopolitical sensitivities around Taiwan.
You'd think that would be the absolute worst time to reduce your hedges against currency swings, not increase them.
It does seem odd. The timing is definitely something people are pointing to.
Okay, so that's the insurer theory. What's the official word? Taiwan's central bank must have said something.
They did. Their official statement chalked it up to speculation.
Speculation. The usual suspect.
Pretty much. The source material we're drawing from is quite critical of that explanation. Calls it typical central planner talk, basically blaming a boogeyman, the speculator, to avoid, looking at their own policies.
Deflecting blame, essentially.
That's the suggestion. And interestingly, the central bank also explicitly denied any pressure from the U.S. Treasury about letting the Taiwanese dollar rise.
They denied U.S. pressure.
Explicitly denied it, which, the source notes, sometimes makes you wonder even more. The lady doth protest too much, perhaps.
So the source is skeptical of the official line. How skeptical?
Well, they put an 80% probability on government intervention being involved somehow.
80%. Okay, that's strong. So if it wasn't just the insurers or just speculators, what else could be going on? What would be the motive for intervention?
This is where it gets really interesting. The source connected to Taiwan's dominance in semiconductors.
TSMC. The linchpin for everything from iPhones to AI chips for companies like NVIDIA.
Exactly. Crucial industry. The theory floated is that maybe, just maybe, there was a deliberate move to weaken the U.S. dollar against the Taiwanese dollar.
Okay, why?
To make those vital Taiwanese semiconductors more expensive when bought with U.S. dollars.
Which would then, what, make U.S.-made chips more attractive?
Potentially. It could act as an incentive for boosting domestic production in the U.S., which aligns with stated U.S. policy goals like the GCHAS Act, right?
Yeah.
Trying to onshore more manufacturing.
That's quite a theory, a sort of currency manipulation for industrial policy.
It's definitely out there. And tied into this, there was some media chatter, speculation really, about a potential Mar-a-Lago Accord.
Mar-a-Lago Accord, what's that?
Just speculation about potential U.S. trade talks, maybe involving tariffs that might require other countries to let their currencies appreciate against the dollar and maybe convert some assets into long-term bonds.
And the Taiwanese central bank's response to that idea?
Dismissed it as, wait for it.
Let me guess, speculation.
You get it. Speculation again.
Okay, so lots of theories flying around. Has anything actually, happened since the currency surge?
Yes, and this is significant. Bloomberg reported that Taiwanese financial regulators have, in fact, summoned executives from life insurance companies.
They have. Okay, so the regulators are looking at the insurers.
Yep, definitely. The report mentions the pressure these insurers are under because the stronger Taiwanese dollar hurts the value of their U.S. bond investments.
So that part seems real. The insurers are feeling the heat.
They are. But the source we're looking at still frames it as potentially making the insurers the fall guy. A convenient explanation to cover up something bigger or more complex.
As scapegoat.
Possibly. The central bank governor even held an emergency press conference. Tried to calm things down, dismiss it all as just market chatter.
Market chatter. For a 1 in a trillion move.
Yeah, the source was pretty scathing about that description. Expressed real frustration, feeling like central planners sometimes treat the public like they're, well, not very bright.
Understandable frustration, I'd say. Are there more meetings planned with these insurers?
Apparently, yes, more meetings are scheduled. But again, the source kind of waves this away as potential kabuki theater.
Just for show. Plausible deniability.
That's the implication. Create the appearance of investigating the obvious issue while maybe masking other factors.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it's clear this wasn't just another Tuesday in the currency markets.
Not even close.
This 1 in a trillion event happened. The exact cause, still murky, honestly, but it definitely signals some significant underlying pressures are out there. And it raises some pretty big questions about, well, systemic risk, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We've got the theory about the unhedged life insurers, maybe forced sellers. That seems plausible, at least in part.
Then there's the possibility of government intervention maybe tied to semiconductors, U.S. policy goals. That's more speculative, but the motive is there.
And the official line, speculation. Which, feels pretty thin, given the scale of the move.
So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Given how truly extreme this event was and how unsatisfying the explanations feel, what does it really tell us about how transparent global financial markets are? Or how stable?
And maybe the bigger question is, if a 19 sigma event can happen in a major currency pair like this, What other impossible things might be lurking just out of sight?
That's definitely something to chew on. It feels like this warrants more watching, more digging, and maybe a healthy dose of skepticism towards the easy answers from officials.
Agreed. Keep your eyes open on this one.